Hello, everybody. I'm Sheree Burton, your host of Women Seeking Wholeness. This is our first episode of 2022. And can I just say, I have been wildly anticipating this year. 2022 is the year of the feminine. I see it as the year that we anchor in this energy. 22 is a master feminine number. It actually is the number of feminine wholeness. Some of you who've been listening to my podcast from the beginning know that I actually launched this podcast on 2/22 at 2 a.m. in 2019. It was right after I turned 50. Actually just had a birthday and turned 53 on January 2nd. But anyway, twos have always had a lot of meaning for me. And when I learned on the Sacred Mary Magdalene pilgrimage in France what 22 actually means, it's a number of reclamation. It's a master angel number and all this stuff around numerology that you can go look up. But suffice it to say that this feels like we're now coming into our own and recognizing that the feminine has been missing. And now it becomes, what will we do? And how will we cultivate these vast energies within us? Our masculine side, our feminine side, or yin yang, whatever you want to call it, and integrate them both from an individual standpoint and as a collective. So I feel like this is just a grand new ushering in of everything that spiritual teachers have been talking about for millennia. This is the time that the feminine is reclaimed, where we access our divine spiritual heritage around what that is, irrespective of gender. It has nothing to do with, well, it has something to do with being a woman, but the masculine and feminine energies that live inside of us are not specific to our gender. And I'm grateful that I've had to walk through a literal hell most of my life of not understanding the beauty, power, and purpose of the feminine and what it means to be divinely feminine. I'm going to give you a quote. I found these notes from 2007 where I did a conference for women called Emergence. And it was about just breaking out of the chrysalis and emerging as who you are. And this is 2007. And I'm talking about the divine feminine. And this is in Utah. My heritage is Mormonism. And I drew a lot of Latter-day Saint women into that conference and women of other faith traditions. But they didn't quite know what to do with me. They were super intrigued by it. This notion of talking about the divine feminine openly. But it was also like, is this okay? And also I talked about energy. I talked about energy psychology, and I talked about how everything is energy. And that drew some raised eyebrows. But at the same time, women were simultaneously both intrigued and fascinated. And then also like, I'm not sure how this fits with my constructs. That was in 2007 of September. And here I was openly talking about things that would have deemed me a heretic. And now they're openly talked about. So I read these notes and I'm like, oh yeah, duh, that's so self-evident. But back then it was a new thing. And here we are, 17 years later-ish. I realized that after I did that conference, because of some of the backlash and the intrigue that ensued, that paradox, I sort of tucked away what I was processing about mother and the feminine and archetypes because I didn't think people were really ready. And I regret that. I do, but I don't. I mean, I drew within myself and I amassed a ton of resources and trainings and people and groups and followed my heart all over the world to research the divine feminine. But I largely kept it to myself. And now, now I'm not. So let me share this quote with you from Emily Hancock. Many women today feel a sadness we cannot name. Though we accomplish much of what we set out to do, we sense that something is missing in our lives. And fruitlessly, we search out there for the answers. What's often wrong is that we're disconnected from an authentic sense of self. What is this sadness we cannot name? Perhaps the heart of our melancholy is that we miss the woman we were meant to be. We miss our authentic selves. But the good news is that even if you have ignored her overtures for decades, your authentic self has not abandoned you. Instead, she has been waiting patiently for you to recognize her and reconnect. Listen to the whispers of your heart. Look within. Your silent companion has lit lanterns of love to illuminate the path to wholeness. At long last, the journey you were destined to take has begun. I love that. And I love that I found these notes from this conference in 2007. I had lots of speakers, but I opened with that. And I want to revisit that as we move into 2022. I love this idea of a silent companion that has lit lanterns of love to illuminate your path to wholeness. This silent companion is your soul, your higher self. And the woman we are, quote, meant to be. What does this mean? Who are you meant to be? Be is a beautiful word. It's a charged word. It's a feminine word. Do is more of the masculine, but be is an operative word, I feel like, for 2022. Embracing your being. I used to daydream when I was younger about being powerful and beautiful and spiritual. And I would pray for this, and I would try to form some kind of semblance of a vision for this in my mind's eye. And I always came up short. I was looking around me and all I saw were lots of male leaders, women kind of not necessarily being completely sidelined, but also not really recognizing or understanding how to step into their true power. And so for a lot of us, we were just kind of hard pressed to find those role models. You know, when we talk about the patriarchy, we're talking about toxic masculine ideologies, not just structures, but ideologies that have sort of permeated our culture and sort of infiltrated into every kind of system and structure that basically exists. We were all raised in these systems, so we were trying to form this construct of what it means to be a powerful woman. So I would daydream about this. And what I didn't understand, I didn't really completely understand the laws of the universe, how thoughts work, how energy attracts, and how things are brought to us based on how we're vibing and what messages and frequencies we're sending out. Because I had so much dissonance in trying to form some kind of a mental construct and what it means to be a powerful woman, that dissonance was matched with more dissonance until now, and the resurgence of archetypes and myths. They're kind of making this comeback because they represent this. Well, okay, let me just back up. We entered a Venus retrograde on December 19th of 2021. It took us in through the holidays, and now we're into January, early January 2022. And I think that it goes until almost the end of January. Every 18 months, Venus goes retrograde. And Venus archetypally represents the beauty, power, and purpose of the feminine, representing the beauty way. And there are many shadow aspects as well, but I find it so interesting that Venus went into retrograde just during the holidays and as we're coming into 2022, the year of the feminine. And the reason I bring that up is, you know, we are starting to understand just how connected we are to the myths that have been circulating for millennia about the underworld, about Inanna's descent, which is very Venusian. Inanna being the Sumerian goddess myth that from many thousands of years ago, the queen of heaven and earth, she descended into the underworld to find her sister Ereshkigal. This myth that I'm taking with a group of people, we're going into this descent journey together, and we have a powerful facilitator holding space for us during this Venus retrograde. It's really caused me to reflect on how powerful myths and archetypes are. And I have interviewed quite a few people who talk about the same thing on this podcast, but really I'm starting to just embody this, hey, pick your female feminine power archetype and let her teach you. There's so much power in being able to attach to these role models that are quote unquote mythological or imaginary, but who hold a lot of messaging that have, that's been passed down culturally for millennia around it's your time to shine, women. You've been in the underworld too long and now you're making your ascent journey. And that's the myth of Inanna. So I insert that here because it was so hard for me to form the right kind of mental constructs growing up of what it means to be a powerful woman and for a woman to be in her sovereignty and what is even the purpose of a woman until I started to attach to these really powerful myths. And whether or not they're true is inconsequential. It's what they represent and how they can guide us. You could call it guided imagery. You could call it imagination. You could call it so many things, but they activate our circuits within us for greater expansion. So not understanding the laws of the universe and how they bring what we think to us. I didn't have any idea that I was creating the opposite reality I desired because I had faulty beliefs about the feminine, because I was a product of patriarchy like we all are. And also my own insecurities. Like how am I meant to show up? Who is the woman I am meant to be? And this is a sacred question that only yourself can answer. For me, when I think about awakening to my authentic state of who I really am as a woman, it's about aligning with what's real, what is, what's true for me right now in this moment, and staying aligned with that moment. What is presenting itself to me right now? What are the tools and resources I have? What are the relationships I have? What are the books in front of me? What am I ruminating on? And this has become a point of power. But this silent companion, this authentic self, this soul that lights lanterns of love to illuminate our path to wholeness, is pointing us back to this authenticity we have, this blueprint of intelligence, this spiritual DNA, this physical DNA that contains all the information we need to further our own life path and journey. So we are the walking benefactors right now. Those of us who have bodies are the walking benefactors of literally millennia of faulty beliefs, illusions, and also gifts and powers. They're now all available to us. So when I talk about this being a year of reclamation, it's okay. Yeah, we hit this planetary crisis. We all went into lockdown. Things are not clearing up in the way that we thought they would. There are mutations and boosters and fear and sickness and death, and we're all confronted with our own mortality. Our days are numbered, right? When we want to access our purpose, when we want to access the woman or man we were meant to be, this is only known through the soul. This is only known through getting still and going within and accessing your own spiritual intelligence. You have genius points. Every one of you carry the blueprint for this divine, intelligent, authentic, loving, powerful source and being. So this spiritual blueprint is a carrier of your light. And it's so diverse for each of us. And we tend to think of spirituality in more of a homogenized way. At least we were trained that way sometimes in religion, to see it as one way. When in fact, this silent companion that leads us and illuminates the path before us has a very specific, I don't want to say agenda, that's a kind of a negative connotation of the word, but a plan for your life. What I see a lot, because I've worked for many years with women trying to help them define their purpose, what I hear repeatedly is like, well, I want to do this, but I have to do these other things. Or I want to do this thing is calling to me, but it's just not the right time. Or I want to do this thing is really calling to me, but what will people think? How can this be? How can I do this? I will say to them, you wouldn't even have the desire if you weren't supposed to carry it out. Everything is brought to us. Everything that we desire. And when we really climb into what the divine feminine is teaching, it's teaching that law of magnetism, of attraction, of bringing to you, of receiving, of embodying, of bringing it in. And for centuries, the beauty, power, and purpose of women has been masked. It's been denigrated, hidden, manipulated. Some of you haven't studied energy or the divine feminine because you're afraid of it. You've heard quacky things about it, and the metaphysical seems so out there to you, and I agree. There's much about it that's been muddied, but it's a pure science and a pure set of concepts, and it's timeless. All the laws of the universe and all those laws upon which God, source, however you define that, and the heavens operate involve energy. We all have a vibrating energy field operating within and around us. Science has instruments that can partially detect this, but most equipment is not advanced or sensitive enough to pick up all our subtle energies. And that's because these energies are very spiritual. They're infinitesimal, quantum level, subtle, but very spiritual in nature. Our spirits hold energy. The planets hold energy. Life holds energy. The entire universe is suspended with energetic fields and forces. And your particular energy is sensitive to different frequencies. When you are introduced to a concept that holds light, let's just say you're introduced to a concept that has something to do with your purpose, you will feel a speeding up within you, and your entire energy field and body respond by vibrating faster. And that's how you know it's a high frequency. That's how you know it's for you. I would actually encourage you to go listen to the episode that I recorded about the difference between feelings and emotions, because this is what I'm talking about. Feelings usually come through really clear but subtly. And emotions are charged with information, and they usually come up from our subconscious. They're very messy, very dynamic, kind of knee-jerk, very volatile in nature. Whereas a feeling comes through as a high frequency. It comes through into your energy field, and so you experience a physical sensation. So your blueprint, your quote unquote woman you were meant to be, your template, responds to higher frequencies that come into your field or into your awareness that are meant for you to embrace. And it will recognize those things as truth. Throughout your life, it'll just seal that in. A lot of times we are born into constructs where we're told, this is what you need to believe, this is what you need to think, this is what you need to do, and then you'll be happy and everything will work out great and you can go back and live with God. Talking about religion here, but there are many ideologies and philosophies that we pick up along the way through academics and our family systems, our friends, and the media, of course. But ultimately, we already came into this world with our own divine blueprint of what we are meant to do and be. And so we will experience a zing or an energetic charge or a divine spark when we are presented with something that activates that blueprint. We've picked these up all along our lives, but sometimes we just push them down because they don't fit the construct we were and the paradigms that we're presented with and born into. And this is sad. I've experienced this. There were many years that I pushed things away and pushed things away and pushed things away in favor of keeping the peace and staying true to my inherited belief structure. The task now, and what I see happening with a lot of people, and I'm listening to a lot of spiritual teachers talk about the implications of 2022 and this new era. And, we entered the Aquarian age about this time last year. It's just a new way of walking around the planet, and it's a new way of being inside yourself. Everything outside of you is always a reflection of what's going on inside. And the task of life is to become aware, to become awakened, to slow down to the paces of nature, to come home to yourself, to love yourself, to love the earth, other people. But it is also knowing that in order for you to really step into the woman you are, man you're meant to be, to activate your divine intelligence, your spiritual blueprint and DNA, it takes a death and rebirth cycle. This is just the way nature works, the way that your soul evolves. I talked about Inanna and the myth of Inanna going to the underworld. That's a total death and rebirth cycle. It's a rite of passage into your soul path. Many of you are in that transition right now. There's a reason it's called transition, because transition in the birth story, if any of you have had babies, transition is one of the hardest, if not the hardest part of giving birth, of labor. And transition is always taking you somewhere really powerful. In order for us to embrace who we were meant to be, we have to go within. We have to extend radical compassion to ourselves and literally drown out the voice of others. There's no other way. There's literally no other way to find your path and to find your voice and to find your purpose and your soul calling other than to go within on a regular basis. So we've come through this crucible as a collective, right? 2022 being a reclamation year, a year to redesign our lives, to look at where we've come from and where we want to go, and to say, you know what, this is the beauty way I want to live. This is how I want to feel. This is what I want to call in. So one of my faithful listeners to this podcast, Angela Havens, sent me a DM on Instagram. And she said, all your podcasts are spot on for me. Thank you for what you're sharing, how you're showing up with your gifts. So what she requested is surrender. How do you surrender on a daily basis? How is the day in the life of someone practicing this process of surrendering? All of what I just shared with you is a lead into this, because this is everything. And I appreciate, Angela, you asking that. She did mention in her comments something about nervous system regulation, and that is everything, because everything is energy, and our nervous system is highly attuned to the frequencies around us, especially if you're empathic. But this process of surrendering to what is, to the things that you cannot change, and accepting is really what surrender is about. If surrender is a heavily charged word for you and it's just got so much connotation that's got bad energy or vibes for you, then replace it with acceptance. You could even use the word allowing. Light and truth, the divine source, God, has this high frequency, high vibration. Dipping down into a lower frequency, that's a signal to stop everything and accept what is, good, bad, or ugly. This is the message from your subconscious. This is the message your soul is sending you. This is the message from the universe, God, angels, guides, whatever your belief structure is with that it's time for you, when your energy is dipping and you're at a low frequency and you feel lethargic and you feel down or you feel super confused, that it's time to stop everything and accept what is. So this process of surrender, I've tried to work into my moments in life. I could go to bed feeling one way. Maybe it's more, let's just say it's more positive. Maybe I had a great day. So I fall asleep and I'm just feeling good and I'm sending up gratitude prayers and I'm just staying in that frequency of gratitude. And then when I wake up, I'm in a completely different frequency. Something happened overnight. Who knows what happens when we go to sleep? There's lots of theories on that, but we are processing and our soul is not at rest. Our soul is busy at work for us, for our own expansion, our own growth, our own evolution. So I have a choice. I can sit with this or I can fight it. And when I say sit with it, I don't mean necessarily that I love it. I'm just accepting it. So the surrender comes in the acceptance of this is what I'm feeling right now. Sometimes I feel impressed to change my state, like to do something like go for a walk, go out in nature, use a tool. But most of the time, what I've seen is most powerful is just to be with my breath and let it ride. These moments where, we're in this big shift happening right within and around us. And actually you will be confronted with this over and over and over until you come into acceptance of triggers. And triggers are our treasures. Triggers are our teachers. Triggers show us where we need to focus and what we need to allow. So that looks like, hey, I'm in this frequency and it's low. I'm going to stay attuned to what my thoughts are. If my thoughts are defeatist, they're victim-y, then that's how I know that I do need to use a tool. But if this is just an emotion that needs to work through me that's been suppressed or repressed, then I'm going to let it ride and I'm going to feel it. Otherwise, it'll come back cloaked in another form and I might get sick or I might get stopped because that tends to happen when we don't surrender and accept. So this practice is very much moment by moment. Thank you, Angela, for that question because I have so much more to say on it. And actually, most of my episodes will focus on nervous system regulation, trauma release, because we are in that age where all this trauma is in our faces. And we are all, again, walking embodiments and benefactors of ancestors before us. We've inherited all of this trauma. We've inherited the trauma of the feminine wound, the mother wound, and the father wound. Healing is about managing your flow of energy. And you cannot manage your flow of energy without slowing down and assessing how you feel and what's happening in your internal environment all the time. This is not easy. It's simple in theory, but it's not easy because there are many demands that are pining for our attention. And women are very relational. And so when we see a need in the exterior, we want to run and meet it. And that's okay. There's a season for that. At the same time, we put ourselves at risk for depleting our energy stores because the essence of all being, remember, coming back to the woman you are meant to be, the essence of all being is energy. Our physical self, our spiritual self depends on this unrestricted flow of energy because this is the source of wholeness and this is the source of wellness. There are many channels coming in and out of us. You know about the 7 chakras probably in the 7 major energy centers, but we have a lot that we're absorbing from our environment. There's lots of streams that are being emitted and that we're picking up on, both from the collective, like the collective fears that we're seeing in the news and whatever. By the way, I don't watch the news anymore. I've gotten to the point where I literally cannot sit and watch the news. I don't want to be ignorant, but at the same time, I want to listen to my intuition. And my intuition tells me this is not your programming right now. This is not what you want to take in. This is not the frequency that you need to be matched with. The 2 things that create true healing in the body are resonance and flow. They both have to do with quantum physical energetic state changes because everything is energy. And no person, substance, or thing makes you well. You make you well. Healing is an inside-out discovery process. It's a function of energy management. So when I'm talking about opening up That's very feminine. I wish you could see my gesture right now. I'm literally opening my arms and my heart to the world. I don't know about you, but I want to live open-hearted. And if I'm going to live open-hearted, I have to find a way to protect myself and manage my energy. And that looks like moment by moment surrender. Not just surrendering to pain, but surrendering to joy. Sometimes you'll get a bubbling up of a feeling and it's really beautiful and it feels divine and it feels like, oh, this feels so good. And then the old fears come in of, oh, you can't sustain this. Oh, you're not worthy of this. And there's a saboteur that just sort of recycles. And I myself am becoming more and more aware of that. And I would encourage you also to become aware of that saboteur voice. When you start to feel the good things, let it ride, just like you're feeling the pain and you need to let it ride. The opposite of flow is being stuck or being blocked. So when you have a blockage, it's going to manifest as pain or tension in your body, tension in your head, tension in your heart, or anywhere else in your body. When the energy is constricted, it becomes blocked and that reduces the flow, obviously. You get stuck. You're literally stuck. So if you feel stuck, how do you open your heart? How do you open your mind? How do you open yourself without going into a contraction of fear? If you feel stuck, that's beautiful because it's a time for you to come back and assess what you need to actually feel, what you need to let ride. So this is where lighting a candle and getting out your journal can be really powerful. Doing some music therapy. I know for me, music is the tool. Music is my favorite tool. I have a whole playlist, several actually, of songs that bring me right back in. And all I have to do is close my eyes and I'm there. Sometimes I need to weep. Sometimes I need to laugh. Always it's a process of surrender to what is. I will share this with you. I am in an Airbnb 7 minutes from my home the entire month of January to write. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about this in upcoming episodes, but I'm heavily writing right now. And I'm finding that, there's this term writer's flow. And in order for me to be in flow and write, I'm finding that I have to move the energy in my body. If I'm having a mental block or I feel like my heart isn't being heard in my head, the messages from my heart are not making it to my brain and I'm not consciously knowing what needs to come out, it's time to create a state change. And this also is an act of surrender and acceptance. Like, oh, I'm blocked. Instead of forcing myself into continuing to do this writing, I need to do something else. I need to either breathe or meditate or go for a walk or sit with it and ask and surrender into what this block actually is. 9 times out of 10, you'll find that your blocks are created from old mental programming. So there's nobody out there creating the block for you. It's happening inside. It's like the old voices in your head. And just knowing that and honoring that and saying, no, I'm creating new programs. I'm laying down new neural pathways. And this is how I take care of myself. So when we're talking about nervous system regulation, we're really talking about breath, movement, and nature. Of course, hydration and nutrition, rest and all of that. But finding ways to connect back into your silent companion, that quote that I read at the beginning. The silent companion that's lighting lanterns of love to illuminate your path to wholeness, your authentic stream of intelligence that brings you into your own body, your own lived experience, your higher self as your soul star guide, along with Creator. It's undeniable that there is a higher frequency that is waiting for us to attach to, a higher power, a higher way of being, and also not being afraid to go into your shadow. Feeling supported as you go into the underworld, if we're attaching back to the myth of Inanna, and just recognizing that that is part of it. So surrender is about breathing and allowing. It's about accepting what is, no matter what it is. And it doesn't mean you don't experience the human emotions of grief and shock and sadness and anger and rage and all of those things. We're not bypassing that. In fact, it's just the opposite. We're allowing that to run its course. We're no longer stuffing it down. We're getting it out. In this private sacred process, really having a journal or a recorder where you can talk into or screaming into a pillow, going out in nature and letting nature have it, she can take it, right? Putting it into the ground. It's important to ground these emotions that are trying to circulate through you. We are holding that feminine wound and we are trying to work with it and we are trying to love it and give it compassion. But also there's a lot of sacred rage there as well. Back to becoming this woman we are meant to be. Who are you meant to be? You are meant to be exactly as you are right now and nothing more. If you never accomplished one more thing, I have to tell myself this all the time. If I never finished my book, that's okay. I'm still the woman I'm meant to be. It's not what I produce. It's what I am being. And this is the feminine. You have everything that you need right now to thrive on this planet. We had this old patriarchal paradigm about reaching for greatness and growing and setting goals and New Year's resolutions ad nauseum, right? But really, we're just being called to come back to our bodies, to nature, to one another. And because it's been this disconnection from the feminine that has created all this planetary turmoil energetically. So you can't manage the energy outside of you, but you can manage it within you. And that looks like returning home, looking at your soul's deepest yearnings and honoring them, which is also very much accepting what is and surrendering. You will come to know your role in this universe. You'll come to know your role you're here to play on this earth in very intimate ways. But also what's more important is that you just came here to experience the beauty and joy of life and the sorrows. Do you feel called to perform a purpose? Are you hungering to learn new truths? Do you feel an urgency you can't explain? Like maybe your time's running out, which is always an illusion. But are these feelings increasing in intensity? Many of us are experiencing strong shifts right along with the earth. We're strongly desiring to heal, to inspire others some way, to live our divine purpose. Things will keep ramping up in intensity, but what I want to bring home for you is destruction may seem like it's increasing, but so is creation. We are the ones who will say, I choose to listen to the silent companion. I choose to listen and see and be led by the path of my own authenticity. My silent companion has lit lanterns of love to illuminate my personal path to wholeness. And this is a credo that we can all live by right now, as we've seen such huge expansions with innovation and technology. We're going to see even more, and we're going to see that you will see probably that you'll be infused with new ideas. And you'll also probably be going through some dark nights of the soul, continuing as we go through these continual death and rebirth cycles. You wouldn't be confronted with it if there wasn't a way for you to descend into it with support. We're all stronger, we're all wiser, and we get to move forward and create the life that we were meant to live. And so I wish you all a very happy new year. Just as a reminder, I have the Stand, Speak, Shine course right now that you can go to and find on my website, standspeakshine.com or cherieburton.com under Work With Me, where you can join the wait list. And we're going to launch sometime either this month or next with some really exciting new product that I'm coming out with that I can't wait to talk about. But anyway, it's very affordable, $222. It's self-led. It's 12 weeks, but we go through 12 feminine embodiment practices, and we really cultivate that within a community online, and you're getting that tribal support, and you're also connecting into what it is you want to create as we move into this historic time of being on the earth. So I hope you'll join me also on Instagram, cherie.burton, as well as asking to join our private Facebook community, Women Seeking Wholeness. Have a glorious week, and we will talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.